Excellent. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Again, my name is Kate Osier-Campbell, and I serve as the Director of Outreach for SSATB in the Northeastern United States. Before joining SSATB, I was a Director of Admission at both a pre-K through postgraduate day school as well as a boarding school, and so I'm very familiar with the admissions process that you're about to undertake this year. And I'm excited to talk to you tonight about the SAO and how it can help you streamline the process of applying to schools. More importantly, really take a lot of the time out of your applications to schools so that you can spend time focusing on what's really important, and that's finding the right school. As Karen mentioned, we're not going to be talking about specific schools and their process tonight, and we're not able to answer school-specific admissions questions. So please remember to check in with the schools where you're applying if you have very specific questions related to their admission requirements. So let's go ahead and get started. The standard application online is really a fantastic tool, and it's been in use for a number of years now. We've certainly been able to make a lot of enhancements to the system as we've moved along that benefit both students and families. But the gist of the system is that you can complete the application pieces one time. Your teachers complete the application recommendations one time, and then they're sent to all of the schools where you're choosing to apply. So it really is a time saver. Again, we really want you to spend time focusing on the right next school and less time worrying about the paperwork and whether or not it's been received by schools. So you have a few pieces of information here on the screen. One of the important ones is that we have over 460 schools that are accepting the standard application online right now. So you have a lot of options. Odds are many of the schools that you are looking at accept the standard app online. Now, we get the question a lot if a school doesn't necessarily say they accept the application, or if the school has their own application, which one should I do? What is preferred? And I can tell you unequivocally that if a school accepts the standard application online, they accept it without prejudice, meaning it does not matter what application mode you use to apply to a school, they just want to see your application. So the actual format that you're using isn't necessarily the important piece of the process. It's simply getting your application in the door. So rest easy knowing that when you're using the standard app online, it is viewed in just the same way a school would look at their own application if they had their own online application or any other format that they may accept. Important, here down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see ssat.org/admission. When you follow there, you can actually go straight through to the link for our school feature, which I'll show you in just a moment, but that's going to allow you to see all of the schools that accept the standard app online. So let's jump in here and get started. Again, I mentioned ssat.org. It really is your one-stop shop when it comes to all things admissions. And you may already be familiar with the website if you've created accounts for testing, if you're doing that for any of the schools that you're looking at. But what we do here when we're getting started and we're looking at the school search process is to click right on that admissions tab right up at the top of the screen. That's going to bring you through here to this great page which has a wealth of information about the application process for schools. There are resources to help you choose which schools you want to look at, help again sort of creating that checklist or finding a school that you may be interested in. We have a great section talking about the admission process, the application, preparing it, things you may want to know to be prepared for your interviews. There's a calendar which kind of helps outline the timeline that a lot of our schools follow as well. Certainly there's the section on the standard application online, which we're talking about now. And we actually have another section called the SCCA. That's schools currently considering applicants. And it's a feature that is especially helpful to students who start the process at kind of a non-traditional time of year. Students who may start the process a little bit later than some of our schools' deadlines. We see schools with both rolling admissions, meaning they accept applications all year long until their seats are full. And we have other schools that really hold hard and fast to certain application deadlines. So depending on what time of year you start your search, this is a great place to check and make sure that you're looking at schools that are currently considering applicants. So let's go ahead and get started here. When you're using the school search feature, there are a lot of great filters that you can use to sort out exactly the kind of schools that you're looking for, boarding or day, if you're looking for a specific single gender or co-ed school. The application for the SAO can actually be used for students that are applying to pre-kindergarten all the way up through postgraduate, that 13th year. So, you may very well be looking at a younger grade here, and that's something that you can certainly choose to select as one of these filter items. But you always want to make sure you're checking off that box for accepts the standard application online. That's going to allow you to only be looking then at the schools that will accept the application online. If you don't check this box, you are going to see every member school of SSATB. And that would be every school that, some schools maybe are members of our organization and just use the testing piece with applicants and not necessarily the application. There aren't a whole lot of those, but it can get confusing if you don't check off that filter box and make sure you're looking at the ones that accept the application. So just make sure when you're doing your search you've checked that box. Now, once you've made a list of schools that you want to look at and that you want to use the application for, you can come right on through and log into your student account. You're going to click right up on that, I'll jump back here one page. When you're looking at the your student account page, or if you're looking at ssat.org, up in the top right-hand corner you're going to see a student login button, so you can click right through to that, and then you're going to come log in here. You'll enter your username and password, and if this is the first time you're visiting our site and creating an account, you'll see over on the right-hand side there's a little option to create a student account, so go ahead and do that if you need to. Now, once you're inside of an account, this is your account homepage, and you're going to select the My Applications piece from your student portal. When you're there, you're going to see some important information here. The first one is that you're always going to be able to click on the button labeled Application Instructions, and that will allow you to open up a PDF that shows you step-by-step how to complete the application process. So if ever you're confused when you're going through this process or you're using the application, just go ahead and click on that application instructions. You can download a copy, you could print it off, you could just save it on your computer, but it'll allow you to have sort of a handy reference as you're going through the process. Now, the second piece that you see here on this page is the click to complete biographic information. One of the things point out here on this screen, and you'll certainly notice it as we move along, is that when you're inside this application portal, anything that needs your attention is going to be red. Once it turns green, you'll know that it's all set. So we try to use those cues to just make it a little bit easier for you to see exactly what needs to be done at any given time. Now, what you need to know about the biographic information section is that it can be completed once, and it needs to be done during one sitting. You can't save a draft, you can't return to it, so you really need to make sure that you have the time to complete this section when you get started. And this is a piece of the application that students and parents will need to work on together, because there may be some questions that students wouldn't know without the assistance of their parents. So just be aware that that's a piece of the application you're going to want to do together. Now, I said make sure you have the time. It typically does not take more than 20 minutes at the most to do this particular part of the application, but just beware, again, you can't save it in draft form, so you want to be able to give yourself enough time to finish this piece of the application in one sitting. The other piece I will just note here, and you see it on the screen, of course, is that we have a note there about your SSAT test scores. And the way the system works, you can't send your scores through the system through this particular part of the system. When you need to send scores to schools, you actually go right back to that home page and you click on the My Scores tab. Because some students take the test more than one time, we would never want to assume that we knew which set of scores you should send to a school with your application. And so we really keep both the scoring process and the application process separate. Again, so when you're ready to send scores, you do that through the My Scores page. When you're doing the application, you do that right here through the My Applications page. So just to clarify that before we jump into things. Now, this is kind of an overview of the student biographic information. I know it's probably small on your screens. I really just kind of captured some screenshots to give you an idea of what kind of information is being asked. It's really requiring some details about the student's background. We're asking for basic information about the student, you know, their address and date of birth and things like that. We're looking for the education history, where the student is at school currently and where they have been in the past. And then we're asking family information, you know, about the student's parents or guardians, any siblings that might be in the picture. So just, you know, sort of giving you kind of a sneak peek at what that information is that you'll be asked. Understand that as you're moving along, you'll see some fields marked with an asterisk. Those are fields that have to be done, and the system won't let you move along unless you provide information in those fields, so just be aware of that. As you complete each page, you continue, you submit it once you get to the very end. If you have already created a student account for testing, you've probably already provided some information to us, like the student's name and date of birth and, you know, maybe a little bit more information there. And so if you've done that, you'll notice that when you start the application, some of that will pre-populate over here. And so you'll just want to make sure that anything that maybe already came over when you started the application, you just want to make sure that you're reading it closely and making sure that it's accurate before you submit it to the system. Okay? Really, really important. Once you submit this, you're not able to make changes to it. So before you submit anything into the system, it's really good to make sure everything is correct and accurate. If it isn't, you want to change it. If it's something that the system won't let you change, but it's wrong, please contact us at SSATB and we will help you change that before your application is submit. Really, really important. We want to make sure things are right. Particularly, you know, pay close attention to things like your date of birth. Make sure that, you know, the month, the day, and the year you were born are listed. And again, it's the year you were born, not necessarily just the day of your birth each year. Now again, when you get to the very bottom of this particular part, or I say sort of bottom as though you're scrolling down the screen, but I would say the very last page of this biographic section, you will be asked to check a statement saying, you know that you won't be able to make changes once you submit this. So just, again, be aware that we want to make sure everything is accurate when it goes into the system for the first time. Now, once you do that and your information is complete, you'll see that what was the red button telling you to complete the biographic information has now turned green. You know that it is completed. You can open it at any time and view what you have put there for your information, and you can certainly click and open that to print a copy for your records. But again, you're not able to make changes to the application once you've done that. Now, you're going to, for your next step here, you're going to click on the Continue with Application button, and that's going to sort of put a pop-up right on the screen in front of you, and it's going to ask you what grade grouping you're applying to, and you can choose from the drop-down menu. You'll have the options of either PK to 1, that's pre-kindergarten through first grade. Then you'll have another option that is 2 through 5, that would be grades 2 through grades 5. And then the other part would be grades 6 through PG. And for today's example, that's the one I'm showing you on the screen here. But again, you're going to choose the one that's right for you. Select the grade group and then press Submit. Now, the next screen that will pop up is going to ask you if you're working with an advisor. That would be a placement counselor at your current school. For students who are already in independent schools, you may be working with an outplacement counselor. If you are working with an organization like a community-based access organization, you may be working with a placement counselor at that point too. If you are, click Yes there. If you are not, just click No. So make your choice and then go ahead and press Submit. Now, I just want to show you here, if you did say yes to that question, you are working with an advisor, you're going to search for them and add them here. So you'll type in the name of your advisor. It's not a specific person's name. You're actually searching for either your current school or your organization. You would type that in here and search for it. your current school or placement office would need to be a member of SSATB in order for you to name them here as an advisor. So if you do a search, if you're not sure and you do a search and you can't find them, then it's safe to say, that they're here. If you do, you just click that you acknowledge you're waiving your right to view pieces that this person might upload on your behalf. Again, if you're working with a placement counselor, they will be helping you through this process, and so this is why you will be, sort of providing this permission for them. And then you simply click the hyperlink down at the bottom that says Add Advisor, if you are working with one. If you were not and you selected No from the previous screen, you'll simply be brought to this page, and for those of you that have added advisors, this is the next page you see where you're going to start adding schools. This is the process where you choose the schools that you want to send your applications to, and so in order to do that you would click that Add Schools button, and when you do that, this pop-up appears that allows you to start searching for the schools that you're interested in. You can type in any portion of the school's name, and so I typed one in here that's somewhat common. You may see a couple here. And so you would open that up, and you'll see if any school that sort of matches that name or similar to that naming convention will appear there. And so you really want to pay attention to the state that's listed next to the school name, as we have a lot of school names that are similar, but they're in different locations. I showed, here we have 3 schools that sort of match this description, all of them being in New Jersey. Another one that you might see where a lot of options come up, if you're looking for any school that starts with the name Saint, either ST period or the word Saint, you'll notice we have a lot of schools that sort of start with that name. And so when you type that in, you're going to have a much longer list here. So you want to make sure you're reviewing the list of schools that have popped up on the screen very closely to make sure you're selecting the one that you want to add. Once you find the school that you want to add, you just go ahead and click Select, and that's going to allow you at that point in time to then add that school to your listing. So you'll see that here. That's your final step. Once you find the school you're interested in, just simply press Select. And to add the school, what will happen once you do that is this screen will appear that's going to have a few pieces of information you need to complete. You're going to have to select the appropriate responses for the grade that you're applying to, and that would be now the specific grade you're applying to. You're going to have to indicate your residential status. Will you be a day student or a boarding student? Are you applying for financial aid at that particular school? That's an important one. And then if the school has an application deadline, it will be listed here. So for this example, you'll see here the application deadline is listed as rolling, meaning the school will accept applications and pieces of applications at any time up until the point where they're full. Not to worry, if they are full, they would turn off their application, so you don't need to worry there. If it says rolling, just know that you're probably not racing against a deadline for your materials. Then you'll also notice special instructions. Now, not every school that you look at will have special instructions, but some of them will. Things like special instructions or things that are special instructions that might appear here, if a school requires a visit maybe as part of their process, or if they have other information that they need to make sure applicants know, they're going to list that here in the process. Now, the other piece that you have the option to fill in some information for here on this screen is the legacy information. So legacy, if you have any relatives or close contacts, friends, etc., that have graduated from that school that you're applying to specifically, you can put their information in here. If you don't have any of that, just go ahead and leave it blank. And then you click Add School Now to proceed. Now, you go through that very same process, clicking the Add Schools button, to add each one of the schools that you choose to apply to. You don't have to do them all at once. You can sort of do that in any order, but you do need to select at least one to get yourself started. The other piece that is important to note there is that different schools have different requirements, so I'll show you a bit more about that when we kind of move along through the process. But once you add a school, you will be asked to enter this information for each one of the schools that you choose to add. So again, the grade that you're applying to, the residential status, etc. And the reason for that is there might be some schools that you're applying to as a boarding student, but other schools that you're applying to as a day student, some where you might be applying as a 10th grader, but maybe others where you're applying as a repeat 9th grader. So there's a whole bunch of scenarios. Again, that's why you're going to fill this particular page out for each of the schools that you're applying to. Once you fill out all of that information, you click on the Add Schools Now button. Now, you do need to pay for at least one application in order to get the whole process started here, and this allows you to start working on the application. So when you add a school, you're going to be brought here, and you'll notice now that the information that was just at the top, the biographic information complete section, you'll notice there's a whole lot more information down below that, information about the school that you've added and some payment information. This is what we call your application workstation. This is kind of the dash for your applications. So what you see here is the school that you've chosen. As you add more schools, they would appear here on the screen, kind of just below this one. And down at the very bottom is kind of like your shopping cart, is sort of the best way I can describe that. It's pretty user-friendly. I think once you're in there, you'll see sort of self-explanatory. Again, the things that will need your attention will kind of call that out for you. What you should know, though, is that schools will not be sent your application until you have paid the application fee for that particular school. Really, really important. You need to know that application fees vary by school, and each school can set their own fee. Our schools usually have different application fees for domestic students and international students, so just be aware of that. When you have chosen, again, at least one school that you want to apply to, you may have more on this screen as well. That is your choice. But once you do that, you will select the application that you want to submit payment for by putting a check mark in the box next to the name of the school. And again, you have to pay for at least one application to activate your application workstation components. So the fees for your application can be paid by credit card, and a $6 administrative fee will be applied by SSATB per application submitted for processing the applications through the system. Now, if the application fee poses a financial burden to the applicant's family, you can request an application fee waiver, and that's done by contacting the individual schools that you want to apply to and requesting an application fee waiver from them. The fee waivers are granted at the discretion of each school's Office of Admission, so that's not money that SSATB can give away. That's something that each of the schools would have to decide, to sort of give out a waiver. And the application fee waiver is only valid for the application to the school that gave you the waiver. So if you're applying to more than one school, you will need to request an application fee waiver from each of the schools. If you're submitting an application with an application fee waiver, please note that the SSATB administrative fee is also waived, and that will happen automatically. Now, once you've chosen the school that you want to apply to, go ahead and click on the Select Schools for Payment. If you're using a fee waiver, you put that code right in that empty box there on the screen, and then you're going to go ahead and click the Pay to Submit Selected Applications. The payment page appears. This is just like online shopping. You review the selected schools, and then you can submit your credit card information to do that. Now, you should note that you can remove a school at any time up until the time that you submit payment to them. So if you have 4 or 5 schools that you're considering, you may have added all of them to your dashboard so that you can see them all at once, but you may choose to only pay for one of them to get yourself started, and then maybe you'll wait to apply and submit the applications to those other ones until, after you've gotten to visit them or once you're sure that you really do want to apply to those schools. So just note that until you pay the application fee for a particular school, you can remove them from your application dashboard. So that's important. But once a school has an application status of paid, it can't be removed because it has been sent to the intended school. So envision that anything that says paid, once you submit that application fee, it's like you dropped it in the mail. That's it. It's gone. And it will go instantly in real time to the schools where you're applying. Now, once you've paid for that first application fee, you'll notice that your dashboard here, your application workstation, is activated. And so you can begin by reviewing which of the components are required by the schools that you're looking to apply to. So maybe you have one school here, maybe you have more than one. As you know, all of the required components are going to be marked with the word required on the workstation, and you'll notice here that they're in red. When you're applying to multiple schools, you always want to look at the required components for each of the schools, because while one school may require all of the components, another one might not. Now again, anything that you're doing in the system is going to be duplicated and sent to the schools. So if both of the schools you're applying to ask for English recommendations, then your teacher only does the English recommendation once, and it will be sent to both of the schools. But you may be applying to 2 schools and only one of them requires an English recommendation. Your teacher will still do it. It will just only be sent to the school that requires that particular piece. So again, just be aware of that. Now, again, I just call out to you the statement about SSAT scores. Your scores are not automatically part of the application, so you have to designate your score recipients under that My Scores tab here. Students are not able to send other scores via the system, so you can't send your SAT or your PSAT, any other admission score or tests that you may be taking. You can't send those scores through the system. You need to send those directly through whatever testing organization you used for those. Now, one of the other pieces we often get questions on would be this third one, the school report and transcript form. A lot of people want to know what that is. The school report and transcript form, the school report is a form that is filled out by your school. It contains basic information about your school. It asks questions about, how grades are calculated at your school, if the school ranks. It will ask questions about your attendance record, things like that. It's very basic. And then the transcript form, once someone at your school, whomever you've designated, fills out the first part of this form, they will be asked to upload your transcript. That would be your report card. Now, important that with transcripts, most of our schools require the current year to date and the most recent 2 complete years. So, sometimes that's confusing. We have a lot of instructions in there for the person at your school who will be completing this form that help them understand exactly what forms they should be uploading. But every now and again, someone, may only put this year's grades in there, and then the system, sends only those to the school, and the schools where you're applying may reach out to you and say, wait, we need more than just this year's grades. And so just be aware when that happens, don't panic. Just ask your current school to send along, your grades for the last 2 years directly to the schools that have asked you for those. So not to be concerned. And the other piece to this is all of these forms in the application, again, I mentioned this with the application, but all of these forms are processed in real time. So the moment your transcripts are uploaded here into the system, any of the schools where you have applied to receive them that minute. So, if your school says, we like to wait until December when all of the grades are closed for the semester before we send them out, it's okay, assuming that, you haven't passed the deadlines for those schools. It's okay because as soon as your current school puts something in this system, it'll be received on the other end. So there's no delay with having to worry about the mail. The moment they add it into the system, it's going to be sent along. Now, let's jump into kind of the pieces of an application and getting things started. With the student essay and the parent statement, which I'll show you here in a second, these are required components for students in grades 6 through postgraduate. And the parent evaluation is actually just required for, it's a little bit different when we look at the grades PK through 5, actually the parent statement is slightly different. The student essays are only required for students that are in grades 6 and up, so just be aware of that. These sections, the student essay and the parent evaluation, can be completed and submitted only one time. And then again, they're added to all of the applications that you're submitting. But you can't save these in draft form. So to preview these forms or to see what they are, you simply click on the red icon itself, and that will open the document up. So here, this is the student component, the student essays that have opened up here. And you'll see there's 5 questions that you're being asked to complete. And there's some instructions up at the top. I just kind of blew them up a little bit so you could see them in a bit more detail. But important notes here. The essays for both the students and the parents cannot be saved in a draft form. So what you want to do is open the document up just like this and then paste the questions into something like a Word document where you can work on them at your own pace, where you have the benefit of spell check, and you're sort of not under a time gun. You can really take your time and work on these without that pressure of worrying about, getting them into the system and uploading those. You have a limit of 5,000 word characters, including spaces, and that's, for each of the questions, so just be aware of that. Really important, again, we would never want you to be, sort of made your way all the way down to question number 4, and perhaps you hadn't submitted yet and you lost your internet connection. That would be horrible. Again, the system isn't saving a draft for you. So really important that you work on this in something like Word and really take your time to kind of review them before you submit them along as part of your application. Now, we get a lot of questions about what 5,000 word characters are. So I just will show you this quickly. If you are using Microsoft Word, you simply click on the review option up at the top of your screen when you're in a Word document. Then you can click on word count and this little box will appear. The number that you want to be looking at is the one that says characters with spaces. So you'll see here, this is just, kind of an example of some text on a page. This is single spaced, at least half of a page of text, and that's only 1,833 words. Characters with spaces. Like I said, each one of the questions on the essay portion has a 5,000 word character limit. So you'll see you can actually put, a pretty substantial amount of text into each field if you needed to. So don't be concerned that you'll go over there. Now, once you submit that particular part, so that was the student essays, for example, once you finish those in a Word document and you copy and paste them back in, you can submit it. Once you do that, you'll see that it's turned green so that you know that that's a part of the application you've done. So that's really helpful. And you can always click on that print button to open the document up and either look at it or print out a copy if you wanted to keep a copy for your records. So that's just handy to know. Now with the parent evaluation, very similar. Again, this is the part that parents will work on. There are the same, there are instructions at the top that let the parent or guardian know what's being asked so that you'll be aware of that. And again, the 5,000 word character limit, including spaces, is the same for each question as you move through the parent evaluation. So important there. Now, the one thing I will add is parents, please only complete the parent portion of the application, and students will complete the student essays. While it is always appreciated by your students to have you proofread those, before they submit them, and you and your child could work on that together, we encourage you to really allow your students to work on the essays on their own. Make sure that is their writing, that the students are the one completing that process and not mom or dad or their parent or guardian. So once we're looking then at the teacher recommendations, I will add one quick note here. If you are working with a placement advisor, you do want to check with them first before you assign any of the teacher recommendations. They may have a different process for you to follow, so really, really important. If you're working with an advisor, make sure you check with the advisor before you start assigning teacher recommendations. Otherwise, if you're not working with an advisor, or if your advisor has told you go ahead and assign those recommendations, you can do so simply by clicking on the heading of the particular recommendation. So in this case, we clicked on the English recommendation. A box will appear on the screen for you to complete and submit with your teacher's contact information. You have to acknowledge here that you're waiving your right to read this form once your teacher completes it. And again, that's pretty sort of standard practice with any teacher recommendation or things that your school is uploading and completing on your behalf. You will understand that it's a confidential part of the application process, and so you won't be able to view that part. So you put in the name of your teacher that will be filling out the recommendation form. You do this for each one. You'll put in their name, their email address, and then the name of your current school so they can enter that there. Once you do that, you'll notice that that particular form on your dashboard, the status changes. And so instead of just saying it's a required form, now you're going to see that it's a required form, but you've designated it to someone. So you've done your part there, and that's really helpful. Very much, sort of standard practice. You want to do this for each one of the recommendation forms that are required. Your teachers will automatically receive an email from SSATB with a link to complete the online recommendation form. Your teachers don't have to create any kind of a recommender account, so don't be concerned there. This is very easy. Your teachers will receive an email directly from SSATB with instructions about how to complete the process. Now, you want to stay connected with your recommenders. So if you notice that your teacher hasn't had a chance to submit the recommendation after some time has passed, you can check in and make sure they received that email link. Maybe they didn't. And if they didn't, you can resend it just by using the same instructions we did. So you click on English recommendation form again. It'll bring up that little box. You can put your teacher's information in there again and submit it, and that will push another email out to that teacher. Maybe you had the email address, sort of wrong by one character or something. You can always change it. The same is true if you had to change a recommender. So maybe you assigned this to your English teacher and then she left on maternity leave and now you need a different English teacher or a different teacher to fill that out for you. You can always go in, as long as the teacher didn't complete it, you can always go in and change it to a different teacher if you need to. So just be aware of that. And you'll see here I've shown you on the screen, you have a math recommendation that's showing as required submitted. So that submitted date shows you the date the teacher did it. Now you won't be able to open up and see what they did, but you'll know that the teacher completed it and that it's there as a part of your application. So when you add other schools, that form is going to be sent right along to those schools with your application. It's really quite handy. Now, some of our schools require supplemental forms as part of the application. This could be anything, if a school wants to know specific information about you, maybe they have a very specific student essay that they want you to complete about their program, they may require a supplement form. And so if you see those forms marked as required, you just go ahead and click that gray required or the click here button below required. And so then there's kind of a three-part process. This pop-up box will appear. The first step is to download the supplement by clicking on here. That's going to open up whatever the supplement form is that they want you to complete. So you can open that form up, you can print it out, you can save it to your computer, whatever's easiest for you to do, and then you're going to need to complete that form. Once you've completed it, you save it back to your computer as a PDF. And the form will be a PDF when you open it up the first time as well. you save it, and then just like attaching it to an email, when you're ready to put it back into the system when you've completed it, you just come back, you click on the supplement form again, and then you browse and attach it in there and upload it as a part of your application. Again, that may seem a little bit sort of confusing, but trust me, once you're in there, it will make a lot of sense to you when you open up the form and see how the process works. Now, what's really great about the application, again, once the form is designated to a recommender, or once your recommenders start completing the forms, you're going to be able to see exactly what's going on with your application and kind of if those pieces have been submitted, if the schools have received them or not. So this is really helpful. You don't have to worry about calling each school to see if they've received the pieces, because you're going to be able to see really clearly, whether or not a piece has been sent to a school. So you'll see the date that it was submitted, as well as the fact that it's done. Now, once you're monitoring those, when all of the parts of your application display required submitted, your SAO is complete for that particular school. So you can see that this example school, everything is green. I know I've done my part. Down on the end, there's a school supplement. I see that there's not one required by that school. Perfect, great, I'm done, right? It's really important that you verify that all of the application requirements for the school where you're applying have been completed, and you would do that by looking at the school's website. And you certainly, if you're visiting them, you can ask them directly to ensure that you've completed everything. And the reason I say that is because some schools do have additional application process requirements. They may require a campus visit or a campus interview, and you have to schedule those things directly with them. So there isn't a way that you track it right here on this screen. So you just want to make sure. Now, the other thing I would give you sort of a heads up on, again, schools may contact you to request additional school records or transcripts. So remember I said before that sometimes, your school might upload just the last year of your transcripts, but the school where you're applying wants to see the last 2 years. Don't worry if your school didn't send the right ones at the first try, and a school calls you and says, no, we need something else. It's okay. Just ask your current school to send along directly to that school by email or snail mail, but usually email is sufficient. Just send along exactly what that school means. So not to worry, sometimes those initial submissions might not be complete, but it's quite all right. We'll make sure you're sending those things along. So it is important to kind of maintain that communication with the schools where you are considering your applications. Now, do not mail or email any of the application forms to us at SSATB. Though, we certainly love to see the applications coming through the system. We're not able to process any paperwork you're sending us, and we certainly wouldn't want to, delay applications to schools because you've sent something to us in the meantime. Of course, if you have any problems with the system, or if you're having any problems uploading your supplement form, for example, you are welcome to call us or email us, and I'll leave that information up on the screen here when we finish up. We will help you get anything you need to into the system. So if you have a hard time putting your supplement in there, just let us know. We can help you get that in there. In fact, I just had a student yesterday who emailed us and was having trouble with that part of the process. They didn't quite understand it. And so the fantastic folks in our customer service and support team, they sort of got right on that. The student emailed the form to them, and then we were able to help them upload it right into the system. So if you have any problems, you know where to find us. We'll leave all that contact information up, but we're happy to help you. The final piece here, I will say, so I talked a lot about whether you add schools or not, or when. Some of our students may only start with one school where they submit their application and they work on all of the pieces. And then you can add schools, again, at any time by clicking on that Add Schools icon up towards kind of just above the grid there. You'll see you can add schools. Same process, you search for the name of the school that you're interested in applying to, and you'll select the school and add it in. You'll notice that the status for the school that I've added here is showing up in red, and it says Remove. What that means is that nothing has been sent to that school yet. I may have all of the pieces that that school wants, but nothing will be sent to that school until I pay the application fee for that school. So again, just know that that's kind of where the stopgap is. You add schools by clicking that Add Schools button, and you'll always have them in the remove status until you pay their application fee. So really, really easy to kind of see clearly what needs to be done with any particular application. Now, these are just a couple of frequently asked questions before we jump into the question part of the webinar this evening. One of the most frequent ones we get is, how does a teacher complete the recommendation form? Again, that's all electronic. So when you put in the name of the teacher that will be completing that particular recommendation, we send an email to them directly with instructions on how they complete the recommendation. It shows them how they do that online. And again, we're happy to support them. We provide them with information to reach out to us and contact us if they have any problems or questions, so we can certainly help them do that. Again, teachers don't have to create accounts online in order to complete your recommendation forms. There are secure links that take care of that, but they can't do them in draft either. So kind of like your student essays, when a teacher does a recommendation form, they have to do that all in one sitting as well. A lot of students always want to know, can I see the questions that teachers are going to be asked to answer about me? We don't have that form, available for students. These are very basic questions. The form's pretty generic about the student and his or her performance in the classroom. It is narrative, and it's not specific to a particular school because, again, your English recommendation is going to be sent to every school where you're applying, not a specific school. And so because of that, we advise teachers, and certainly you can remind them, not to mention a specific school where they think you'd be a good fit, because the teacher's only going to fill out the one form, and then it'll be sent everywhere. Another common question, what if the person who's supposed to complete the recommendation doesn't know me or doesn't know my child very well? You know the teachers that know you or your child best. And if a teacher from last year is better able to offer the recommendation, it's definitely worth contacting the schools where you're applying and asking if they might be willing to accept a recommendation form from a past teacher instead of a current teacher. Now, not every school will say yes to that, and so you need to sort of be aware that you will have to adjust your planning accordingly. Obviously, if one school says no to that, then you need to sort of do what all of the schools will accept. But what schools might say is, we'd be happy to take an English recommendation, or we'd happy to take one recommendation from last year, but we require, the other one be from a current teacher. So just be aware of that. Stay in touch with the schools where you're applying. Now, similar answer to the question, if I'm homeschooled, who should fill out the teacher recommendations? Again, I say contact the schools where you're applying and ask them what their preference is. They may ask that a parent complete one or two of the forms, but then they may ask for an additional letter of recommendation from someone who's taught, the child before. This can vary by school and certainly by situation. So I always say stay in touch with the schools where you're applying and ask them how they want you to proceed in that case. With the test scores, I did mention this as we were going through the process, but you can only send SSAT scores with, through our system, and that's done through the My Scores tab of your application or your portal here. You aren't able to send other test scores. Any other test scores that you need to send along to schools as a part of your process should be done directly with the organizations where you completed the testing. That's really important. And then we get a lot of questions about the school report and the transcript, and I know I've mentioned this. Most of the schools want to see the current school year to date as well as the last 2 complete years. And these documents can only be uploaded one time. So if your school, was ready to upload them, you want to make sure they're uploading that one document that has everything in there. And again, there's a lot of instructions in there when the school is doing it that help them complete that process correctly. Now, we have had some families write to us inquiring about like a letter to release transcripts that may be required by their current school. And so that's really important. When you assign that SAO component, you are acknowledging the waiver of your right to see that piece when it's added to the application. It's just like you do for teacher recommendations. But sometimes your sending school is going to ask for an additional release letter. And in this case, this is something that your family needs to facilitate directly. And you can do that very easily by just, sort of putting your request in writing to your current school. It's as simple as sort of a handwritten or a letter that says, I authorize my current school to upload or send, these documents electronically directly into the standard application online system. This is not a letter that SSATB would provide you with. This is something that or your receiving schools for that matter, this is something that you simply ask for from your current school. And then I'm just going to leave this screen up here with our contact information. As Karen mentioned, if you have a question that we're not able to get to this evening, please reach out to us. We're happy to answer it. Go ahead and drop an email to apply@ssat.org, or tomorrow during the day, you're welcome to reach out to us. Our fantastic support center would be happy to help you during the day. They'd be happy to help you online with our live chat feature. You could certainly call in as well. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen and see if we've had any questions come through. Happy to take those as they come.
Hi, yes, Kate, thank you. I have opened the question asking function, so please feel free to type in any questions that you have at this point. Kate, our first question is regarding payment and beginning an application. Can I start an application before I pay for my first one?
So that's a great question. And that is a little bit confusing. You can complete your biographic information first, and that's really the first step in the process. So you're going to log into your account, you're going to complete the biographic information, and you're going to add at least one school. You're going to pick a school that you know you want to apply to. In order to start working on the other pieces of an application, though, like your essays or the parent statement, you do have to pay for at least one application. So even if you're not sure about all of the schools you're going to apply to, you do want to determine at least one that you know you want to apply to. Add them in and pay for that one application so that you can get the process started. And then if you need to wait, you can add other schools in and see what their requirements might be before you necessarily submit or send that application along through to them and pay. You just have to pay for the one application in order to get the whole process started.
Great, thank you. The next question is, do students typically tell their teachers first about the fact that they're being designated for recommendation before they receive it electronically?
That's another great question. So you don't have to let your teacher know, but it's certainly, I would say if you're asking a teacher to write a recommendation for you, it is always wise to ask them first. So I would reach out to your teachers, at the end of class or at the end of the day, stop in and ask them if they would be willing to write a recommendation for you, letting them know, that you'll be applying to schools. Ask them if they'll write the recommendation for you. If they say yes, say, perfect, I'm going to send you a link for an electronic one because I'm using this application online, and you can sort of go about the process that way. If you don't, what happens when you assign a teacher in the system is the moment you assign them, we send an email to them that would say, dear Mr. English teacher, Sally Jones has asked that you complete a recommendation for her. And your teacher may certainly be receptive to that, but they may also have some questions, and it may slow down the process. So you don't have to ask them first, but I think it's just sort of a matter of course when you're going to ask a teacher to do something like that for you, that you do kind of give them a heads up, but definitely ensure that they are willing to write that for you before you get too far along in the process.
Great, thank you. Can a student supply more than 2 recommendation letters through the SAO?
Another great question. So there are a few different recommendations that you'll see come through the system, and this is dependent on what the schools want to see. But You will have an English teacher recommendation, a math teacher recommendation, usually a principal or guidance counselor recommendation. A lot of our schools will ask for that. And then you have that school report and transcript form. You cannot send an additional recommendation kind of above and beyond that through the system. If you have someone else that's written a recommendation for you, like a coach or a language teacher or something along those lines that you feel is important to share with schools, you're welcome to send that to schools directly. And some of our schools have online processes. So, it might be easier for them, and you can certainly ask this question of them. Would it be easier for you if that additional recommender sent it via email, or would they prefer it to come in the actual mail? That's dependent on each school. But I would encourage you, if you have recommendations above and beyond what the schools are asking you for, just check in with them about how they'd prefer to receive those. But you're not able to send them through the application online.
Thank you. The next question, does the teacher recommending have to do it multiple times for each school?
Yeah, another great question. So what's really great about the Standard App Online is that your teachers only have to write a recommendation for you one time. So if you're applying to 2 schools or if you're applying to 10 schools, your English recommendation only has to be done once, and it will be copied and added to each of the applications that you're sending along. So quick answer is no, your teachers only have to do that one time.
Thank you, Kate. David is asking, how much does it cost to use the online application in addition to the application fee for schools?
Sure, yep. So the application, you'll notice when you submit each application, you will have a $6 processing fee that's added there, and you'll see it's a separate item. So you'll see a separate line that says $6 administrative fee. So you'll have that for each of the applications you submit. Again, for the ease of use, that's typically, for most of our families, something that is not a problem. For those families that are using application fee waivers, if you're not, paying that application fee for each school, when you put that application fee waiver code in for a school, it will also automatically waive that SSATB administrative fee as well.
Thank you. We have a family here that has a new principal at their school this year that does not know their child very well. I know you touched on the teacher recommenders not knowing the child well. What should they do if the principal or the guidance counselor is not very familiar with their child?
Yeah, so this that's actually a pretty common one, especially even new principals, but especially in schools that are really large. Not everyone will know your child really well. So there are 2 things. The first is, checking with the principal or the guidance office to see if they can complete that form. The principal and guidance recommendation form is actually quite a bit more generic than a classroom teacher's. It's really asking kind of, I don't want to say higher level questions about the student, but it's asking more generic questions about the student. It asks about, the disciplinary record, which is something the principal or the guidance office would know. It asks the questions about grading policies for the school, attendance, questions like that. So, if that recommender can complete the form to the best of their ability, if they don't know your child as well, they can state that. What will happen, and that form is not even one that's required necessarily by every school, but the teacher recommendations are usually going to carry a bit more weight in the process because they are the people, and certainly admissions offices reading these know that, a guidance office may see your child a couple times a year, but teachers are seeing them every day. So it's typical that usually those teacher recommendations are going to carry a bit more weight than that principal or guidance form.
Thank you, Kate. We have a family asking if they're not sure whether they're going to be applying for financial aid, should they just say yes in case they plan to?
That's a fantastic question, and I should actually have a slide in here about that. Yes. And the reason I say that is for so many of our admissions offices, it's really important that they know up front if a family will be applying for financial assistance for a couple reasons. one of those reasons is that most schools that are offering financial aid require additional paperwork. There's usually a separate application process for financial aid. And so you want to make sure that you're kind of giving them the cue, even if you're sort of saying, hey, I'm thinking about applying for aid. You want to be telling them that early on so that you get on their radar and they're making sure that you're mailing and doing those documents. So sometimes you might say, yes, I'm interested in applying, and then they would send you the information you might need to know about financial aid for their school. So yes, please, you for that reason alone, you would want to do it. The second reason is that for so many of our schools, their financial aid budgets are incredibly tight. They are very generous. Most of them have, funding. They certainly want to make sure that students have access to their programs, but they also have a limited amount of money. And so for what will often happen is if a family doesn't let them know that, they will not even consider that family for financial aid later on because they've already awarded their funding, or they've already sort of calculated their year out before that family lets them know. So I always would tell you, err on the side of saying we think we're going to apply, because then if you don't apply, there's nothing lost. But if you do end up applying, at least the school knows to expect that they might see that. Again, it's just sort of another double check in the process so that if you do need it, you're not missed or overlooked in that way.
Great, thank you. I have a family who's living in Canada but are U.S. citizens applying to school in the U.S. Are there schools on the list that are members or that can be used by the SAO system in Canada?
So you will want to see when you're looking at that school search feature. We do have a couple schools in Canada that accept the application online. So you do want to check, depending on where you are in Canada, you want to make sure when you're using that school search feature and you've checked off the schools that accept the standard application online button, indicate your country of Canada, and then it will provide you with a list of those that are accepting it. If you're not sure, you're welcome to reach out to the schools where you're considering applying and ask them if they accept it. A lot of our schools, like I said, over 460 schools do use it. Any member of SSATB is welcome to use the application. It's free for them to use, and they can turn it on at any time. So even if, the school you want to apply to isn't in the system right now showing as a school that accepts the application, you're welcome to inquire with them and ask them if they do accept it or if they're willing to accept it, because they simply have to turn the system on in order for those applications to come through to them.
Great, thank you, Kate. Michelle is asking if you've already added a school and completed all the pieces of their application, can you go in, access your account, and add another school and have all the completed information shared to the added school?
Yes, that's exactly how the system works, and it's the beauty of the system. So if you've completed your application in its entirety, all of the pieces are in there. All of your teachers have done their parts, and then you decide tomorrow that you want to add a new school. The moment you add that new school and pay their application fee, every part of your application that's on file in the system is sent to them. So in essence, that new school you add tomorrow would receive your completed application.
Great, thank you, Kate. We've actually had a clarification. They're wondering if the SAO accepts recommendations from Canadian teachers. Sorry about that.
Oh, sure. So no, that's another good point. The forms are available to be completed by teachers anywhere in the world. So your teachers in Canada can certainly fill out the recommendation forms as well.
Excellent, thank you. We have a family asking how quickly the teacher recommendations are submitted to the schools and whether there are any reminder emails that are sent if the recommendations haven't been submitted before due dates.
Yeah, that's another great question. So the moment the teacher submits the recommendations and they fill it out, they press submit. The moment they submit it and it's a part of your account, it's available to the schools where you have sent your applications. So it's instant. The reminder emails are not sent out to teachers. So that's why it's important when you're monitoring your application and you see, every part of your application is done, but that English teacher just hasn't gotten to it yet. That's when you want to check in with your English teacher and say, did you get the link to that recommendation form, or Do you need me to send that along again? You know, my due date for this is next week, so we need to make sure, you know, that's completed. That's really where you're able to be a part of the system. And it's actually kind of a nice part of the system, because when we used to do everything by mail, you know, you would ask your English teacher to do it, and then you would have no idea if and when they did it, and if it had been mailed out to schools or not. So what's great about this system is you're able to see, you know, right away if your teachers have or haven't done it, and then you can check in with them and see, you know, some teachers, you might assign them the form right now, but they might say to you, you know, I'd really rather wait until we finish the end of the first quarter or the end of the first semester before completing that. And so, you know, would it be okay if we finish it or if we do the form by, you know, the 20th of December? Is that okay? And so that's really where you help your teachers. Your teachers won't know the deadlines of the schools where you're choosing to apply, because that they won't know which schools you've chosen to apply to. They simply know that they're completing a recommendation form for you, and then that form is sent to as many or any schools that you choose to apply to. So it's important for you to manage that part of the process in terms of ensuring the completion piece of the forms themselves.
Thank you, Kate. I'm going to go ahead and read one more question, and then feel free to wrap up. We have a family asking, can they edit the previously sent statement when they're adding a new school to apply to?
Another great question. So once you've submitted documents into the system, imagine that the submit button is like dropping it in a mailbox. So you're not able to edit documents in the system once you've pressed submit, even if you add different schools. The only things that are customizable by school are the supplement forms. And those supplement forms aren't required by each school. Again, you know, one school might ask for an additional essay question, but others might not. So there isn't something that you can sort of customize for each school. If there's something specific that you want to make sure a school where you're applying knows about you, or if there's something, you know, that you feel is very relevant to your application to that school, but there isn't sort of a neat little box to drop it into here as a part of the standard application online, we encourage you to send that or reach out directly to the school where you're applying to make sure that they're aware of whatever that specific piece of information is. So that's actually a perfect wrapping up point for us, which is, you know, the application online is going to make things much easier for you as you're applying to multiple schools. But, you know, again, it's a common process. So when there are specific things you want to make sure schools know, you do still want to have that contact with individual schools in that regard. So you won't have to replicate much of your work, but those specific things or specific details, you'll definitely want to make sure you're connecting with the schools where you're applying about. So again, you know, we have information here on the screen for you to reach out to us if we didn't get to your question this evening, and we stand by ready to help you every day. Certainly, you know, you're welcome to email us even over the weekend. We'll be able to get back to you first thing Monday and answer any of those questions that you might have about the system. We're happy to help you through the process, and we wish you the best of luck in your admissions process with schools for the coming year.